You claim about forced labor in Shenzhen. Have you witnessed this yourself? Have you been there ever?
I've been to China many times.
Have you witnessed
since
forced labor in
1979?
Have you witnessed forced... Just a short answer.
Can't believe the Liberals have been filibustered a committee to avoid condemning China for their use of forced labor. Is that what's going on here?
Prime Minister Mark Carney made an agreement with China to remove tariffs on Chinese vehicles, and many Canadians had concerns, not only with the possibility of malicious software reporting back to the Chinese government, but also with the cars being made in part by forced labor by the Uyghur people. Experts were brought into the industry committee today to weigh in, and you will not believe the results.
Let's take a look.
I've been a supporter of EVs for many years. At Industry Canada in 1995, I and my team introduced technology roadmaps to Canada jointly with industry leaders, and one of the first was in automotive technologies. In 2008, as ADM of Energy Technologies at Enercan, I initiated the technology roadmap for electric vehicles. I wanted Canadian companies and researchers to have a major role in the sector. This will be significantly aided by Canada's automotive strategy and Ontario government initiatives. However, I have a major concern about the introduction of Chinese EVs into the sector. First, our auto sector is under major stress with the imposition of U.S. tariffs in the heavily integrated North American market. This is not a good time for cheap imports to compete with cars our own workers make. In Brazil and Hungary, Chinese cars assembled from kits, never from local suppliers, are made in heavily roboticized factories, so they aren't the same number of jobs that our own factories have. Second, dozens of parts in each Chinese EV are made with aluminum from Uyghur forced labor. A 2024 report from Human Rights Watch says this includes Chinese brands, but also Western vehicles, including Teslas, Toyotas, Volkswagen, and GM cars made in China. Bauxite is shipped thousands of miles to Xinjiang to be processed into aluminum by free-cost Uyghur forced labor, and then shipped from there to car and parts companies. It's illegal to import products into Canada made in whole or in part with forced labor. But the staff positions at ESDC and GAC related to forced labor are being wound up in the cuts, except for a comms function. And it is not a priority in GAC's departmental plan for 2026-27. Also, a key customs notice on forced labor has disappeared from the government website, and the new notice regarding Chinese EV firms lists what companies must comply with, but makes no mention of forced labor.
This was absolutely shocking to us.
It's crazy. This is the first 5 minutes of committee. And we were watching this later because of what happened later in committee that we watched first, if you can follow that. But we're showing it to you in the right order now. But this was crazy, because she was dropping bombshells that we hadn't heard before. So ESDC and Global Affairs Canada are essentially, according to her, cutting the staff as part of Mark Carney's cuts that have any involvement with enforcing, whether forced labor products are coming into the country or not.
And that's a huge issue. To me as a Canadian, I don't want to support any business that uses forced labor, whether it's at home or abroad. And the fact that they're cutting staff who are ensuring that forced labor products do not come into Canada, that's a big problem.
So we decided to start nosing around, and this is what we found. So this is on the Custom Notices website, on the CBSA portion of the Government of Canada website. And this is where they post all of their notices for companies and goods and countries and that sort of thing. So if you go down here, we wanted to see if there's anything on here related to EV or electric vehicles from China. And sure enough, right here, China Surtax Order 2024 electric vehicles, revised 2026 February. So February 26th of this year, it was changed. This is what it says here. So you can see updated. So updated February 26th, see paragraph 7. All right, let's look at paragraph 7. Effective March 1st, 2026, the order amending the China Surtax Order 2024 repeals Section 3 and Schedule 1 of China Surtax Order 2024, which subjected imports of electric vehicles that originate in China to a surtax. These imports are no longer subject to a surtax. What does that mean? Well, what that means in a nutshell is prior to this 100% tariff that we put on the electric vehicles, it was in a group of products which were all subject to a 25% surtax. So anything coming in, it would be, you'd have to pay a 25% duty on. That's basically what would happen. Now, in addition to removing the 100% tariff on it, Mr. Carney also decided, well, we might as well take it off that other list as well. So they completely removed it from that list. And then we said, wait a minute, what else is on that list? Well, in order to do that, we were looking at the other customs notices, and there's something in the middle here called the China Surtax Remission Order, which is what that other one pointed to. And that was revised in March of this year.
Just a few weeks ago.
What is this essentially? Well, what this does is this is a way for, even if you're paying that 25% surtax, this allows you, if you're a company in Canada, to get it back. And here is just a sample of the dozens and dozens of products that are actually subject to this. So, for example, number 12, if you're a company and you're buying stainless steel lashing wire or rebar tie wire, what that allows you to do is you can apply to the government to actually get all that money back. So they're putting a 25% surtax on a bunch of things coming in from China. But what's the point when you're allowing companies to actually get that refund back? So this allows Mark Carney and the Liberals to say, we're being tough on China. Well, in a very underhanded way, they're not. They're actually still allowing China to compete. Now, they will say that, well, there's no guarantee that you're approved for a refund or anything like this, but the fact that you're offering it in the first place, that could be argued that that's kind of a problem when you're trying to be tough on China, just like we were tough on the Americans until we reduced all the tariffs from them too, right? But we're going to stand up to these hegemons, like he said in the Davos speech. Anyway, this is the rabbit hole that we went down, and we decided to stop there because we have a whole other video to get to. But this is what this lady is talking about. There's some crazy things going on when it comes to Mark Carney, Global Affairs Canada, and China.
Mr. Ma, the floor is yours for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the witnesses being here. Due to the time limit, I'm going to be asking for very sharp, precise answers for the following questions for Ms. Krieger-Johnston. Do you have an advanced degree in technology and cybersecurity? Yes or no?
No, but
Thank you.
I have spent
like I said,
37 years
I
in
need
that
to get short answers,
business.
please.
Okay.
The other one is you belong to the China Strategic Risk Institute. So does this institute specifically look for risk when there is in one? Yes or no?
No,
So why is it a risk institute?
because it analyzes risks that are obviously there.
Thank you. So the last question then is, you claim about forced labor in Shenzhen. Have you witnessed this yourself? Have you been there ever?
I've been to
Sorry.
China many times.
Have you witnessed
since
forced labor in
1979?
Shenzhen?
No.
Have you witnessed forced, just a short answer. Have you witnessed forced labor in Shenzhen? Yes or no? So did you get that
I
from
work closely with
hearsay?
Human Rights Watch, where researchers
Okay.
did witness it.
So thank you.
Wow.
Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Ma.
I'm glad he's not on our team anymore. That was disgusting, the way he was speaking to that witness.
Some might say misogynistic, but we'll just leave that there. Because after all, aren't the Liberals supposed to be the party of feminists? They can answer that question themselves. So here's the thing. Now, we only showed you part of the witness's opening statement, but she talked about the fact, if you recall, that all the aluminum that is actually produced in this one part of China comes from these forced labor camps. And what Michael Ma was trying to discredit her and saying, well, have you ever been to China to see this happening with your own eyes?
Well, and that's the disgusting thing. It's like, have you ever gone on a tour of the forced labor camps? Have you ever seen it? We know it happens.
Well,
like her whole, I don't want to call it a business, but her organization looks at stuff like this. She's an expert. That's why she's there in committee.
Well, and she referenced a human rights organization that actually put together a report on this. It's kind of, one of the reasons why the Canadian government and Parliament recognized the genocide of the Uyghur people a few years ago. That's the whole reason why they targeted Michael Chong in the first place.
You mean except for the cabinet?
Oh, right. Except for the Liberal cabinet, including Justin Trudeau, including many of the cabinet ministers that are actually under Mark Carney. Isn't that interesting? So the other thing that she was talking about is the spyware that is in these EVs, which prompts Michael Ma to say, are you a cybersecurity expert?
You don't need to be a cybersecurity expert to read reports about it. I'm not a cybersecurity expert, and we did a video on it, and I read the reports.
I didn't go to school to get a degree in the longest ballot committee, but I was still called to committee to testify against the longest ballot committee. So you don't need a degree in something to be able to actually speak to it. But, this is liberal logic that he's using, so maybe he is where he belongs. But the fact that and these are the only questions he asked her, folks. The only reason he asked these questions is to try to discredit her as a witness. So if you're trying to discredit somebody for making the claim that there's forced labor camps in China, there is some follow-up questions for that MP.
Yeah, that's gross.
That needs to be asked there. And then he goes on to talk to the Liberal called witness and lets him talk as long as he wants. But, we hear the Liberals interjecting every single day. Chair, the witness isn't getting a chance to make a complete answer here. Isn't that interesting? Anyway, the Conservatives weren't going to tolerate this, let me tell you.
Ms. McQuaig-Johnson, I want to apologize for the member on the other side of the table.
Point of order.
Very rude to you.
Okay, colleagues, just one moment. I sense we've got a little bit of tension brewing. I have a point of order that I'm going to address. And then, Ms. Borelli, I've paused the clock so you won't lose time on the matter. Madame O'Rourke on a point of order.
Thank you, Chair Carr. So we've had frequently the Vice Chair use a similar line and tone in questioning, and so there's nothing untoward in terms of my colleagues' interaction.
Okay, thank you, Madame O'Rourke. Not a point of order that I see in there. Madame Borelli, you're of course free to use your time as Mr. Ma on a point of order.
Well, I obviously in public being accused, and I like an apology from the member from the other side.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ma. That would not be a point of order, and I don't...
Give me evidence that any violation that requires an apology for me on my behalf.
So, Mr. Ma, I think we're kind of getting into a little bit of debate at the moment. Ms. Borelli, I might ask, just for the sake of allowing us to get back to our line of questioning, that we focus, if possible, on the substantive content and nature of the discussion before us. So with that, I'm going to return the floor to you with 4 minutes and 52 seconds remaining of your 5 minutes.
Well, I'll continue with my apology for the behavior of the member across the aisle. You're giving very good testimony.
Point of order. I did not ask you to represent me to apologize, so thank you.
Oh, Mr. Ma. Mr. Ma, we're so sorry your feelings are hurt. Are you trying to say that you don't like it when someone is purporting to advocate on your behalf and take a position on your behalf that you don't agree with? Are you saying that she doesn't represent you and that she's taking a stance that, she didn't consult with you and that you don't like the direction where she's going and you're offended by that? Really? Where would you get an example like that?
Seriously, though, I've met Kathy Burley a few times, and she's an absolutely lovely woman.
She's a wonderful lady.
I I do believe that was very genuine. She must have seen the distraught in the witness's face. Yeah. And, you know, that was her way of comforting her perhaps. But I think that was from Kathy's heart, you know.
Ms. Borelli, I'll turn the floor back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. McQuaig-Johnson, my job as a parliamentarian is to protect Canada, not to protect a foreign hostile country. So my questions are going to be in regards to the ramifications in Canada from this importation of Chinese electric vehicles. So when you combine the labor cost gaps, so 89 to 90% of the labor costs in China are paid off with subsidies. Combine that with state subsidies, the access to capital that the Chinese have. Is it accurate to say that this is not a traditional competition for Canada, but a state-backed industrial strategy that Canadian companies simply can't match?
Canadian companies could never match the labor costs of China, even if there weren't subsidies in China, which there are at many levels. And we see that in where they choose to manufacture. And when I say manufacture, I use that term loosely because what they do is they assemble. They bring the cars over to Brazil, Hungary, or Spain, where wages are low, and assemble in a very highly roboticized factory. And so there aren't the same numbers of highly paid unionized jobs that we see in Canada. BYD, when it went into Brazil, said that it was using Brazil as its wedge in South America, its entree into South America, and then said it's going to use Canada as its entry into North America. It was asked if it would do a joint venture, and they said no. A week and a half ago, they announced no, they will not do a joint venture in Canada. They want to do their own assembly here in Canada.
So this is really, really important because this underpins what the main concern, and this isn't just a conservative concern, this is an auto industry concern. And this is also a concern that's come up from the United States, where this is not fair ground. This is not capitalism and competitive market, which some people are trying to say that it is. When you have a state-sponsored company come in and subsidizing the heck out of them so that they can charge literally whatever they want when they come to the country that they're trying to gain entry to, it is not putting them on fair footing with the other companies that are there. And this is the issue that you see in Europe, where the EVs are coming in and they're charging 10 to 15% under what the rest of the car market is. And they price everybody else out of the market, even when it comes to used cars. And she makes that point as well. So the fact that BYD, which is the Chinese EV company that she's talking about, has said, oh, well, we're not interested in any joint venture, which I recall Mark Carney and the Liberals saying, oh, well, it's going to bring tons of jobs here.
Oh, of course.
Well, evidently not, because they are not interested in that. So this is the big problem. And this is what the United States sees as a risk, where the Chinese EVs come into Canada and eventually they're going to try to move from Canada down through the border to the United States to infiltrate that market as well. And with all of the spyware concerns with them, you cannot blame anybody for having concerns on this. Never mind the workers and the companies in the auto industry.
And I want to quote a speech in the House of Commons from February the 1st, 2022, when debating the speech from the throne. Madam Speaker, there is virtually no doubt from any source whatsoever that there is slavery, that the Uyghur people are being enslaved, that products are being produced out of that part of China, and that the government of China directly or indirectly condones the production of those goods. You probably don't know who said that, but those comments were made by Liberal Member of Parliament, John McKay. He served the Canadian Parliament for 27 years. Today in this committee, we saw Liberal members of Parliament, Michael Maw, Dominic O'Rourke, discrediting a witness to defend the human rights abuses of China against the Uyghur people. And also,
Mr. Falk, I'm just going to have to address this point of order. I'll pause the clock. Madame O'Rourke?
I in no way discredited the witness that was before us.
No,
I did
you
ask her
defended
to,
Michael Maw.
I
You
did
defended
ask her to
Michael Maw.
keep her answer.
So here's the thing I don't understand. Why did they not just ignore the witness like they did when you were in committee?
That's the question, right? And the reason is because the witness and the information and the narrative that she brought hurts the Liberals. That's the problem. Because she was bringing testimony to say, this is a bad idea, what we're doing as a country, entertaining the fact that Chinese can bring their electric vehicles into this country and into the market. That's the problem. So that's why they went after her. Now, this is all fascinating to me because one of the other Conservative MPs actually brought this up, but we don't have time to show you. In terms of some statements that Francois-Philippe Champagne made almost exactly a year ago. And it was a little viewed video on CTV. He ended up chatting with Vashi Kapelos on this. It wasn't really groundbreaking at that time. But let me tell you, it's groundbreaking now. Check this out.
Over the weekend, China said that it would impose counter tariffs to the EV ones that we put on back in the summer. Is your government thinking about considering removing any tariffs on China? Any of those EV tariffs, for example?
We're not.
You will not?
We're not.
Even given the issues with the United States right now, there's no second guessing our posture towards trade with China at this moment?
Well, I would say not with respect to the tariffs that we put, because there was a good reasons. We would say we would never be a backdoor to cheap Chinese vehicles, which are overly subsidized and where they don't respect labor law and environmental laws. I mean, there's a reasons why they're dumping, steel in North America, and you see these cheap vehicles coming here. We want to protect our industry. We want to protect our workers. We want to protect our communities. And the reasons why we imposed the tariff in the first place still remain very valid today.
China's strengths in electric vehicle sector are undeniable. We need to learn from innovative partners, access their supply chains, and increase local demand. Canada has agreed to allow up to 49,000 Chinese electric vehicles into the Canadian market, with the most favored nation tariff rate of 6.1%.
So it's interesting he said that back in March 2025 when they were looking for Canadians to vote for them. And as soon as they got the vote, now what are they doing?
Right? They were anti-China almost to the day until Mark Carney won the election. And then there was a complete policy shift. Because make no mistake, that meeting that happened in China in December and the announcement in January, that didn't happen within a matter of a week. That's months of conversations, months of overtures, months of proposals. So it's not like this came together at the last minute. No way. And here's Francois-Philippe Champagne saying unconditionally, we will not be removing the tariffs. We will not be, and I quote, a backdoor to Chinese EVs, to cheap Chinese EVs coming into North America.
Except after we have your vote.
Absolutely disgusting.
Object. My name is being now broadcast in this fashion in being called. Like you could call me as member of the opposite, the other side, but you are naming people, and that is not the rules we have engagement here.
Okay, colleagues.
Well, then, Mr. Falk,
Okay, colleagues,
I take exception to what
Mr.
you're
Ma,
saying.
I'm going to take the floor back now.
Mr. Ma needs to simmer down. And Mr. Ma needs to understand that you're not in the House of Commons. You are in a parliamentary committee. Notice that the chair calls you Mr. Ma, doesn't call you the honorable member for Markham-Unionville. So maybe you should read the new Green Book that we bought, so we know the rules. Maybe you should read those same rules that people are allowed to call you Mr. Ma.
In committee.
I'm going to take this opportunity to move the following motion, that the committee unequivocally condemn forced labor practices in China. And I would like to remind this committee that it was first a liberal government that first acknowledged the Uyghur forced labor camps and the human rights abuses. It's been widely recognized by the United Nations and other human rights groups. I'd also like to point out that it was in Beijing that detained two Michaels for over 1,000 days. It's because of, not the Chinese people, of course, but because of the government in China, that Huawei was banned here in Canada, that TikTok has been removed from government devices. These are serious threats and serious issues facing our country, and we as a party, or we as a collective here at this committee, need to come together and condemn this. I would also like to point out that there's a record of IP leakage and IP theft. There's a record of using their economy as geopolitical leverage. So I'd like to move this following motion because it's unclear here if Mr. Ma has deviated from the Liberal Party's longstanding opposition to Chinese enslavement and human rights abuses, or if he's soft launching the Liberal Party's.
This is a very, very strategic play by the Conservatives here. They saw an opportunity here and they said, okay, let's see you put your money where your mouth is. So what happens when you introduce a motion committee, everybody? Everything stops.
That's right. So
you cannot question the witnesses. You have to deal with that motion right then and there. So he's essentially saying, let's as a committee, let's unanimously come together and say that we condemn all of the human rights abuses that are going on in China, including forced labor. Now, initially, seemed like this was going to go okay.
Supporting this motion so that we can move on to return to the witnesses and clear the record. If there was any doubt, I didn't see any doubt in the testimony of the minister and the line of questioning from the first hour that would cause any doubt on this question.
Mr. Chair, since my name was being mentioned in this background of the motion, I'd like to set the record straight that the question with the witness was whether she had witnessed forced labor in Shenzhen that she had claimed. I had made no assertion of either support or deny it. I just asked whether she had witnessed it. And so that's the period. That was the line of question. We asked many times with different witnesses whether they have seen certain things that they claim. And that's very legitimate questions. And if the Conservatives want to turn that into a political situation, then, you know, the shame is on your side.
Oh, come on. You don't need to see a zebra to know it exists if somebody else tells you about it.
Well, I found something interesting what he said. He said, I want to set the record straight, but never actually set the record straight if he condemns forced labor. He just said, I didn't say whether I supported it or not. That raises more questions, Mr. Ma. Just saying.
Yeah, I will just say it's glad to see that we're having unanimous consent to support this motion because, frankly, during the testimony, the line of questioning was to discredit the witnesses, basically the witness's authority. And the way that you went after her in that line of questioning was in defense of the fact that, hey, have you actually ever seen this? Meaning there is no slave labor in China. But I'm glad you and colleagues,
Mr. Ma,
we're glad to hear on this.
So, Mr. Guglielmin, I'm going to pause you too. Mr. Ma, the floor is currently mine.
Mr. Ma doesn't seem to like being called out very much.
Well, then maybe he shouldn't do things that require calling out.
Right? Maybe you shouldn't be doing very questionable things and saying very questionable things and asking questionable questions.
But I mean, when a witness goes to Parliament to tell pretty much the country what they know, the MPs should not be disrespecting them like that.
This is where things get a little interesting because of that interjection. The Conservatives said, all right, we're not having this.
I would like to add an amendment to the motion. And the amendment would be this, and that the committee condemn the comments made by the member of Markham Unionville.
Okay. I'm going to just, Yeah, I'm just going to discuss this for a moment with the clerk just to make sure.
So I bet that's never happened before.
That's chair for
Sugar.
That's what that means, folks. That's a Liberal chair. Like
But this is something you would have to discuss with the clerk, because I don't imagine it's happened very often, if at all. So maybe it's in the Green Book, maybe it's not. I don't know.
So, not surprisingly, that amendment was voted down. Not surprisingly. But then something really crazy happened. The Liberals decided to propose amendment of their own.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to move a very simple, very brief amendment to the motion to strike the words in China and replace it with globally, en français, au niveau mondial.
All right. So you heard the Conservative reaction on the other side. And so this is basically what this means. So in the original motion, they are essentially saying that the committee condemns the forced labor in China and human rights practices that are in China, that sort of thing. So what the Liberals are trying to do now is remove the words in China to distance themselves from it and to just say globally.
Which, I mean, yes, Canada does oppose forced labor globally, but they're in a committee talking about Chinese EVs that may or may not be built with forced labor. So why would you expand it like that, if not to cater to optics, I guess?
Well, and you don't want to offend your new strategic partner in China. But look at the pattern here. So you have somebody who comes to committee who's an expert in her field, who studies what's going on in China and studies their geopolitical relationships, is saying that the aluminum that is made in China is made by forced labor, and then that goes into these other plants and gets distributed to other products. And then you have the Liberals coming in trying to imply that forced labor doesn't actually happen in China, trying to discredit the witness for just saying that in the first place, trying to discredit the witness for suggesting that there are cybersecurity risks to Chinese EVs. And then the Liberals go on to say, well, we don't actually want to name China in this motion itself. What?
I find this amendment surprising, but not surprising. It sort of reveals to me an awful lot of where the Liberals are going with this. They seem to want to take the spotlight off of the subject matter at hand, which were the unsafe and forced work conditions in China. And so why they would want to do that, we will leave up to the Canadian public, and perhaps my colleagues may wish to comment on it. I find it very revealing, and perhaps what Mr. Guglielmin said earlier is more true than I thought when we started this meeting today, which is that perhaps these aren't just the feelings of my colleague Mr. Ma, but perhaps it is a soft launch for what Mark Carney is trying to do in terms of softening his stance on China.
And she said it well. I don't need to say anything else. She said it well. Now, what happened after that was a half hour of filibustering by the Liberals, and they just kept talking and talking and talking and talking and talking and talking and talking.
So essentially they ran out the clock, because if you recall, in committee, they only have so much time because they only have so many resources. So that's things like translators and the clerk and support staff, etc.
But the Conservatives, they were able to get one more word in.
Mr. Chair, I can't believe the Liberals have been filibustered a committee to avoid condemning China for their use of forced labor. Is that what's going on here at this committee right now?
You know something, as a Canadian, I am absolutely embarrassed, disgusted, revolted. I can't even think of all the words at the behavior of this government, that they're essentially sticking up for a country that uses forced labor.
And this is after the Davos speech where Mark Carney was crowing in front of the world, trying to say we shouldn't be kowtowing to any hegemonic country out there.
Except if it's China, I guess.
Except if it's China. We don't care about human rights abuses. We'll lie to the Canadian public that we're, never going to remove tariffs from them. We're going to be standing up for people. Well, apparently, we don't care about that. We don't care about standing up to Trump. We don't care about standing up for anything. We don't care about foreign countries and their forced labor practices. We don't care about the Uyghurs, and we don't care about discrediting our own witnesses in our own country so that we can advance our own personal and financial interests over in China. Wow.
And remember, it's not the Chinese people who are doing this. It's their government. Their government is the problem. And I don't know why we're partnering up with a state-sponsored EV manufacturer.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have something to say about this, remember, you can find any MP's email and contact information for their office on the Our Commons website. So if you have an urge to contact them and let that member of parliament know how you are feeling, and maybe you don't like how they're speaking for you, it's always your democratic right to let them know.